Good evening. This is Timothy Wright with Mental Health Awareness, along with my cousin Quintera, our friends Ebony and Michelle. I know it's been a long time since we've been on, but hey, we are here tonight. So hey, Michelle, why don't you say hello to everybody?
Hello, everyone. I missed you all, and I'm happy to be back.
All right. Let's hear from the last time uh, we were here. Before the last time, I think, Ebony, you celebrated a birthday, right?
I did. I did. I did. I did. Thank you, everybody. I'm glad we're here tonight. I look forward to, discussing our topic tonight on suicide, and I'm just excited to be here.
All right. All right. So, first of all, let's do a station identification already. Look, if you're watching from Facebook, why don't you like and share? If you're watching from YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you will get the notification every time we go live. Again, you are here with us with mental health awareness. And one thing we want to talk about tonight is suicide awareness. This has been a topic that has been dear to me, adamant to me. I pastor a small town in Rouville, Mississippi, population about 3,500, give or take. And this year, we had at least two people who committed suicide, one last week, and one fits that statistics that we've been talking about in the age group from like 18 to 24, 18 to 35, Black male. And this has become very adamant to me. So that's why one reason we want to talk about suicide awareness. So that's pretty much what we want to talk about. And let's be honest with ourselves. It's really going through our communities, and it's as if it's in a sense the elephant in the room that we don't want to address. So we need to address that. So let's just talk about suicide awareness. But first, we want to definitely send condolences to that family. And I think I shared this with you ladies that I actually married the boy's father this year. He recently got married. So definitely we want to send out condolences to him. So definitely let's do this. Let's talk about some signs of suicide.
So there are many signs to suicide, and sometimes they can be very prevalent and noticeable to the eye, and then sometimes they're not. You know, one of the biggest things that we have talked about over the past several weeks is depression. Um, Depression is a very prevalent, is a very common disorder, and it comes in waves. Is when you have moments of sadness or overwhelmed by an experience or circumstance. But there are many risk factors to suicide. It could be poor job performance. Um, it could be the passing of a loved one, or being overlooked. You know, you have some children who may be in the same household with other individuals and they're feeling overlooked. Like, I'm here, but I'm not here. You don't even see me. Um, the feeling of rejection, whether that's from a relationship, whether that's from your job, whether that's from your peers, but um, feeling rejected can be a major sign. Um, Sickness or illness, you know, I think those are tricky when you're dealing with illnesses. If you have something that you once was mobile, you once used to be independent, and then you have something debilitating come to you like a heart attack or a stroke or something like that, that changes your life in the blink of an eye, basically. Death of a loved one, financial problems, loss of a support system. So there are many different things that can contribute to um, feeling suicidal.
All right. Anybody else?
I agree with Quintera. There are, you know, a lot of things, and like we said, we have to just be mindful to check in, because sometimes, like the depression we talked about before, you can be functional and depressed, you know, and sometimes you don't know. It doesn't always come out as something, you know, someone looking sad or, you know, feeling melancholy. You have to really check in with people to see, you know, what's going on, and you know that self-care is very important. um the thing with me, I feel like it's kind of hard to really, when someone has their mind set for suicide, it's kind of hard to kind of see it, because they've made up their mind and they don't want you to see it, and you kind of see the signs afterwards. I know we when this happened, we spoke and I told you about my nephew. When my nephew was 23, yeah, he was 23 at the time. He committed suicide. He was like my little brother. And I was so hurt and so devastated, because I kind of felt like, you know, here I am, I work in this field, and, you know, this is what I do. How did I not know? Right. Um, and he was one of those people that was a functional person that was depressed. He was never clinically diagnosed with depression, but we didn't know. You know, you like, oh, well, you know, he has family, he has, you know, people who love him, he has a support system, and you just feel like, what happened, right? And I think with us, it was a little harder because there was never a note, there was never an explanation, it was just done. And then I look back, um he used to always wear these baseball caps. He always loved like a fitted hat. And I remember now thinking back, um, he gave one to my son, he gave one to my nephew, and we didn't think anything of it. Just like, you know, he let him have a hat. And he used to always ask me, he, you know, because when he wanted something from me, I was auntie. But like I said, he was like my brother. We were only like 5 years apart. So he's like, he kept saying, auntie, you gonna dress me, you gonna dress me, because he liked the way I, you know, put clothes together, whatever. So I'm thinking, you know, he wanted me to help him change his wardrobe. So I'm like, yeah, we're gonna go shopping. But he never said, are you going to help me dress? Are you going to pick out my clothes for me? He basically told me he wanted me to dress him. So when he died, I picked out his outfit for us to lay him to rest. Now, and you know, I didn't pick up on that until years, you know, sometime later. So sometimes that can be a sign too, if you notice that they're giving away things that they used to hold dear to them, or they're, you know, like they said, making preparations, and you're thinking like, oh, this is just something that someone's normally doing. Ask, because it could be something else going on. And like I said, we didn't pick up on those signs. And, you know, I wish I did, but I guess it wasn't meant. He didn't want us to know, because he had a plan, you know, and he knew what he was going to do. A lot of times, people call for help when they're suicidal, and they'll tell you, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to, that's a call for help. They're telling you, I need your help because I'm feeling this way. You know, it's not something to be taken lightly, but they are asking for help. And the hardest thing is the ones that don't ask for help, because they just do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Michelle?
And you know, it's really interesting,
Go ahead.
kind of
Go ahead.
before we go to Michelle, but like suicide is preventable. You know, suicide is definitely preventable. And then you have situations where, like you said, sometimes people ask for help, and then you have people who don't ask for help. But it is something that is treatable and it is preventable.
Right. Right.
And I just piggyback off Ebony and Q as well. It is preventable, but we've talked about it over repeatedly on this podcast, on this live. Check in with one another, check in with your family members, go back to the table, you know, see what's really going on. Don't be, you know, asking questions like, well, how you doing? I'm okay, I'm good. No, what does that mean? What does good look like? What does that mean? You know, go deeper. And that's all I have to add. But yeah, there was some good nuggets. I absolutely agree.
So the thing that from Ebony saying about her, her nephew, it sparked this because even we could be in a profession and still not be aware of the signs. So I'm just looking at the fact that if somebody who is professional, what about those who don't have that profession, or how is it? How do you find that? So that's we need answers like that. So how does a pastor pick up those signs?
I think the biggest thing is question anything that's questionable.
Okay.
And another thing is, I think even when we're dealing with like close friends and families, sometimes we notice something and then we don't say anything, because then you just attribute that to, oh, that's just the way they are,
Mhm.
And unfortunately, days pass by, years pass by, and that person suffers in silence because nobody never said nothing to them. But I think when you learn to question everything that is questionable, and then the things that are not questionable, observe those things. I think that's important. That's a start.
And I also think, to just piggyback over that, sometimes you're not going to notice it. You're
Mhm.
not going to be able to pick up on things, but what you're doing by doing this podcast, you're reaching someone. Us having this conversation and conversing about it, someone can be listening and can say, hey, I'm going to pay closer attention to cousin so and so. I'm going to pay closer attention to my niece or nephew, because sometimes, like I said, they're very functional and you won't notice. Like, I mean, I don't know if you guys ever seen that commercial about the medication for depression, and they wear the mask and they're smiling, they're happy. You think, they're fine, but inside they're not. And they're not saying it, nor are they showing it. But when they're behind closed doors by themselves, that's when it comes out. There was a lady, Michelle, we were talking about it. What was her name? That committed suicide, and she left a note for her mother and basically said everything in her life she was miserable, but no one noticed. No one seen it. She smiled, she laughed. Was she a model?
Yeah, she was Miss America.
Miss America, and she in everyone's sight, she was just, this great person. She was happy, but it was behind closed doors, but she suffered the most. And she never let anyone see that, So by continue to have these podcasts and have resources and outlets and educating the community, that's the only way we can really truly prevent it. Because for those who, like I said, are not showing the signs, doesn't mean that it's not there. So it's a hard thing, because it's like it is preventable, but we have to just be proactive with certain things as well, because sometimes you just don't know. How many times we walk around when we get sad, we might get sad, something might happen, but we function, we move, we continue to go. We don't let on that we're not in a good place. We just continue our daily lives and no one will ever know.
Right.
I mean, example be Robin Williams. He was a comedian. Was it Robin Williams?
Right.
Funny.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
He's an actor.
being laughing and funny.
Like
Like no one saw it at all because he was always, funny and laughing and never sad and cheering people up. But behind that smile was depression and sadness and hopelessness,
Right. So we never know who. And I think I said this before. Suicide could be that guy that wears a three-piece suit and he preaches the word. Suicide could be that football player that everybody admires.
Mm-hmm.
It could be, someone we love dearly who might not be famous at all. So suicide has no name, nobody's name on it, but everybody's name on it, really. Sure. And that's where we're trying to get to say, hey, y'all, it's real. And this is something we won't have to deal with. Let's be honest with us, just like COVID, it is something we just gonna have to deal with. It's here. And I know we talk about this all the time, that COVID has played a big part of a lot what we see now. And I'm one who recovered from COVID, and I know the aftermath of it. I've been depressed, and you're like, hey, not you. Like, yes, I've been depressed. I've had emotional breakdowns, and I shared with the church. I say, look, I'm gonna be as transparent as I can, because I don't think they really know how much I have suffered from COVID. And just to be driving in my car, joyous, and all of a sudden I just feel a sadness drop on me. And I just can't imagine other people who are going through. Mine is somewhat, I'm aware of it though. So it's more, I can control it more because I'm more aware of it. But I'm looking at people who have something and not aware of it. So how do we deal with those type of people?
I say, my thing is, I say this, like, we always hear it, but you never know what a person's going through during their day. So always just try to be kind. Just try to say something encouraging. I know it's easier said than done, but you never know. I think back to this interview of Kevin Gates. He told the story. He's a rapper, very famous, and he was going through a depression stage. And he had a plan for suicide. He knew what he was going to do. He decided that this was the day that he was going to take his life. He went to the gym. He was working out. He went and put on all his jewelry. He said, I'm going to go. This is what I'm going to do. The weekend before, he spent the weekend with his kids, had the greatest weekend. He knew this. He had his mind made up that this is what he was going to do. He wasn't walking around looking sad. He wasn't walking around angry. He wasn't crying. No one's seen that part. But in his mind, his mind was made up. He said he was leaving the gym and someone stopped him and said, "Can I just say something to you?" And he said, "I want you to know your music has inspired me. There was a time that I didn't want to be here anymore, but because of your words and your courage, it made me feel like I can move forward in life. I was going to take my life, but I didn't do it because of you." And that one conversation changed his mind. So when we see people sometime and we in our day, we're frustrated, we're angry, we're busy, it takes one small kind word to say something to someone. You don't know what that would do to that person, so that's the only thing I can really think of to, because especially for those who we don't know that's battling with something, just say kind things, because sometimes that can really change somebody, or you can put somebody over the edge, and not even realize it. We're rushing and, someone's at the store and we, say something rude because we're upset. You don't know that could have been the last straw for them. You know what I mean? So just be mindful in your words and be mindful in your actions. Just always try to be kind to others. That's all I really can say.
Right.
Yeah. That's good stuff. And then a lot of times you have people who know, family members, no friends, no people, colleagues who are suicidal, and then they never say anything.
Right.
Because they don't know how to have the conversation, or should I say something, so it's ignored. It's like I knew they had something going on, but I just didn't say nothing, or I didn't know how to approach the situation. A lot of times that happens too.
Right. And I look at this, think about this. We get help for a lot of things. When there's something we can't do, we get help. But then when it comes to self-care, it's like, why do we have this stigma about telling somebody that we suffer from depression, or we're suffering from some type of mental illness, or even suicidal? What is it?
It's guilt,
But
it's shame.
Yeah, it's shame, embarrassment, the stigma that's put on depression. Something wrong with you. That's what they say. When you're depressed, something wrong with you. You're crazy. You know what I mean? It's a stigma that's attached to having challenges with mental health and depression.
Right.
The labels they put on you.
Right.
And people want to feel empowered, you know? People want to feel like they got themselves together, like they can tackle any and everything. And especially when it comes to men, right? You know, men is supposed to be the head of the household. They're supposed to be strong. You know, they're supposed to be providers. They're supposed to do above and beyond of what maybe females can do, or even more, you know, African Americans in particular have to be more dominant than other races, you know? And so, especially when it comes to men, there's a lot of fear associated to if I don't do this, or if I do express that I'm I'm feeling sad, or if I do cry in front of someone, I'm weak, you know, or whatever, you know. So there's so many different things that happen to that. But I really wish that we as a people can normalize when we're not feeling okay, can speak about that and feel comfortable with it, you know?
Mm. So let's pause for station identification, y'all. Hey, you're watching Mental Health Awareness with I'm Timothy Wright, along with Quintera, Ebony, Michelle. We've been talking about suicide awareness. Again, the signs of suicide, it varies. But then let's look at ACE, ACTS, CARE, and EXCORT. Exactly what is that?
ACE is an acronym that's been used for many years. And basically, it's when you notice someone who may have a trait or showing signs of suicide, then you want to make sure, for one, you're asking the question, um, are you suicidal? A lot of people are afraid to ask that question. It is hard to ask that question. You know, I had to ask that question to someone who I really cared about. And for a while, I was very fearful to even ask it because I didn't know how they would respond. But I had to, like, are you suicidal? But what you get for that response, you have to be prepared, because that response that I got was, yes, I am, you know? And so that's the biggest one. You have to ask, are you suicidal? What does that look like? Do you have a plan? And be able to react in a manner where it is therapeutic. Um, you never want to come off as if you're surprised, like, oh my God, why you want to do that? Or convince them not to do it. You know? Um, you just want to be supportive. You want to be as therapeutic as possible. You know, you want to encourage them to utilize coping skills, or how to develop stress management, you know, how to problem solve. Because when you have someone who's dealing with suicide, they feel like there's no other way out. Um, this is the only way I can get my immediate need met. Is feeling like things would be better if I wouldn't be here. And for a lot of people, that's the only option. And so you have to be prepared to ask that question, and then you have to be prepared to make sure you are prepared for that response. I mean, you may get a response say, nope, I'm good. But then you may get a response saying, yes, I'm having ideation. I'm having thoughts about suicide, you know?
And when they're honest about the thoughts and ideations, that again, that's a good thing, because that means they're open for the help, and they want the help. And that's, like you said, sometimes the hardest thing is to ask the questions, and you have to be direct. um and like she said, it can't be a surprise. Like she said, the biggest thing is, do you have a plan? And
That's the
if
biggest
they
one.
have a plan, then it went far. So, but when they tell you the plan, you ask them about the plan, not just to get information and have them talk about it, but so you can try to prevent it. Especially when when I worked in with the kids in the group home, or we would ask if they have a plan. It's like, yeah, I'm just gonna hang myself, or I'm gonna take a bunch of pills, so we'll go in and do preventative things for that. But it's just continuing the dialogue, like, well, what does that look like once it's done? Like, what is it going with, by you no longer being here, what's gonna be better? You know what I mean? It's like just basically kind of processing with them and not really judging them for their decision, but just basically processing and letting them play it all out. And that's usually when they'll be like, okay, they'll start to kind of rethink it a little bit. But just because that one situation, they might change their mind in that situation, it doesn't go away. It's something that happens over and over again if they don't get the proper help. Because I know someone who's constantly battling and tormented with suicide, and he was actually a really good friend of my nephew's. So being that when my nephew did it, he was upset with him, like, how did he do it before me? It's just it's such a sad thing, because it's like, no matter how much you try to tell someone, to try to show them that they're worth it, they need to be here, we love them, if they don't feel it, if they don't get it just constantly battle with it constantly, and you just have to always make sure that you are there to kind of offer that kind word, to show that love and be supportive, and just look for different signs. It's a lot.
Right.
Mhm.
And so,
And even
go ahead.
and even for the person who receives that information, you have to be cautious. Like, you know what I mean? Because that weight, okay, you took the weight off of somebody else, but then you put the weight on yourself. And that weight of knowing that someone you care about, or knowing, somebody you love is having thoughts about not wanting to be alive, that it can do something to you for sure. So making sure that you are mentally prepared to be able to step into that role to help somebody process what they're going through.
Right. And that becomes difficult, because I think once we go into this stage, we got to be consistent and persistent about that person's situation. So I think, like you said, we got to be in it for the long haul as well. People who have the suicide tendency, it don't just start one day. It's a process. It gradually leads up to, this is the day I'm going to do it. And we're trying to get people to that point where this is the day I'm not going to do it. So we want to try to reverse that. So again, this has been so adamant to me, personal as well, because I know people personally who actually try to commit suicide. Thank God it didn't work out the way they planned. But when I think about that, I've always I'm instilled in fear of their life, knowing that if they try to do it one time, they'll try to do it again.
And most likely, statistics will show you that, those who try to commit suicide fail on the first attempt. Right. And the numbers are really high for that. But right. That's very true. Like, if someone thought about it once, maybe they'll act it out again. And you have to be anytime someone who talks about suicide, you have to take it serious. Right. And I think only if you are a trained professional in mental health, specifically diagnoses that are very serious, you have to be like, because you have some people who say, oh, it's just attention seeking. Or, you have different forms of, like, people feel like they use the word suicide loosely, and regardless of how loosely it is said, it is said. And you have to treat it accordingly.
Right.
Absolutely. You're right. And it reminds me of when I used to work in New York, I worked with this girl I worked at a treatment center. And back then the kids are, oh, I'm mad, I'm gonna kill myself, and then she would use it so lightly that it was just nothing anymore. It's almost like the little girl that cried wolf, right? But no one really paid it any mind until she actually did it. And she did. I remember when it happened, it was just like, it's so weird because it was like right after my nephew. It was like at that time, it was just so many people that I knew that were just, taking their own lives. And she went through with it, and at that time, like you said, people use it so loosely. I guess people just didn't take her serious anymore, but you have to always, take it serious. I remember at one point they would say, oh, if someone tell you they're going to do it, that means that they're really not. They're just, like you said, attention seeking. That's not always the case, but if they're seeking attention, there's something deep. There's a reason why they need attention. So just continue to, treat it as if it was something major. It's because it is. If someone says that they're going to hurt themselves, that's major. Regardless of how we feel about it, it's a major thing for someone to say, I'm going to take my life because of whatever reason. So, like when Sarah said, always take it serious, always take it, don't ever take that lightly.
Right.
And so the C is care. That's the action. That's the part you put into action. Like you said, the checking in. For some people who, let's talk about, do you have a plan? What does that look like? Because then, hey, I was going to take pills. Now, you need to get a lockbox and put all the pills away. Hey, do you have people who do superficial cuts? You know what I mean? Like they can do cuts on the wrist. A lot of times people do cuts on their thighs because they can hide it, and, so then you're like, okay, I need to make sure I'm putting the sharps away, or I need to make sure I'm putting the chemicals away, so then that's when you start to do the preventative work, is when they tell you they have a plan, and then you go home and you do safety sweeps. Okay,
right.
Now I need to put anything in this house away that could be an object,
Right.
Right. And then having conversations like, you may have individuals who is not open to therapy, who's not open to go getting on medication to regulate, because at the end of the day, it's chemical imbalances and different things like that. But like, you have people who don't want to take the steps to help them get better, because in their minds, they're like, I don't need this. It's not going to help me. Talking to somebody, that doesn't do me no good, but until you can convince them that it is important, that they're making sure they're doing some of the self-care skills, even at home, taking walks, deep breathing. People don't realize 10 seconds of deep breathing, how important that is. Like, just to be like, you know what, I'm going to stop for a minute and I'm going to really inhale and I'm going to exhale. You know how good that feels after doing that 3 times? There's so many different things that you can do from home, but it's so hard to do it in the moment. A lot of people don't know how to apply it in the moment of having a crisis, in the moment of feeling overwhelmed, in the moment of losing someone that they care about,
I think too, like Quintera said, a lot of times people feel like they don't need therapy. We don't need this. We don't need medication. But I always say therapy is not always going to someone's office and sitting on the couch and pouring out your life. That's not what therapy always is. It doesn't look like that. Yeah, it's great to speak to someone who has, the clinical background to do the clinical therapy with you. But therapy is just us conversing. This right here is therapy, so if we make a practice of talking to our loved ones and checking in, that's therapeutic. So they might not feel like they need therapy from an actual therapist, but in all reality, they're getting the therapy from whoever their loved one is. That's
Right.
why this podcast is so important. I think it's so important for us to give everyone the tools, because sometimes it can be the one conversation that you have with your uncle or your niece or your grandmother or whatever that makes the big difference. That's your therapy, and then once you get to a place where it's like, okay, now they're able to see it, just like we said with depression and things like that. There's steps, the step one, we have to get to that process of, okay, we're talking about it now. I can recognize it and understand that there is a problem, so now I can go get the professional help, so I just, I want everybody to know there is something we can do
Right.
at home, as a community, as a family. It starts with us, so just be mindful. Again, I can't stress that enough. Just be mindful of what you say to your loved ones and people that you may not even know in your community. Just be mindful of it.
Right. So with ACE, you ask, care, and escort. So at some point, we might have to try to get them to get professional help or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
For sure. Escorting is basically taking the necessary steps. Do I need to call emergency services right now? First responders, every county, every state. However, you can always call your local EMT service, firefighter department. They'll come out, they'll do a full assessment in the home. We provided contact information for the crisis stabilization unit who will travel to you basically to come out and do those evaluations. Now, when it comes to the crisis stabilization unit, sometimes because they are traveling remotely, sometimes it will take a period of time for them to get to you.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're stationed in Cleveland and you live in Greenville, you know for sure it's going to take you like 30 to 45 minutes.
Right.
So if you need something sooner, if you need something close, go ahead, call your emergency, your EMTs, 911s. They'll get there sooner than what a crisis stabilization unit can do. Now you can't have crisis on the back burner and say, "Hey, I'm calling 911, but I still want you guys to come."
Right.
You know what I mean? Because then they will be able to assess the needs and also help you develop a prevention plan.
Right.
Now, if an individual is in immense danger to themselves and in danger to someone else, because you do have individuals who are suicidal, but they'll hurt someone else too, So if you do have someone who is seriously in danger to themselves and others, then they're going to be transported immediately, and then they'll be taken to your local hospital, who would then, of course, the physician there will call in a psychiatrist to come in to evaluate that individual and then deem if that person needs to stay on a 72-hour bed hold.
Right.
If someone needs to stay on a 72-hour bed hold and they're saying, hey, after the 72 hours, we need to extend this, then they'll do a higher level of care, which is considered a 1013. And then that person will either be transported to somewhere in a psychiatric unit, or they'll transition to a residential treatment facility.
Right. Yep. So again, this is mental health awareness. I'm tempted right along with Quintera, Ebony, and welcome back, Michelle. Again, if you're watching from Facebook, like and share. YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You will get the notification when we go live. Let's look at the fact that, let's be honest with ourselves. So last week, suicide took place in Rouville, Mississippi. Let's be honest with ourselves. Sometimes we see that it's unavoidable sometimes. So we have to deal with the fact that you have to cope with the loss. So how do we really cope with loss? I think Michelle froze, but how do we cope with the loss?
So of course, we've already talked about the 5 stages of grief.
Let's look at this. Okay, that's where we're going. Yes.
Okay. We can definitely look at that from, acceptance to avoidance. Some of the other ones are denial. Some other ones you have is, of course, depression, And then you have, oh goodness, I'm trying to make sure I got all of them.
Bargaining.
So denial, bargaining. Okay.
Mhm.
So definitely you have individuals who go through, after a loss has happened, are dealing with the stages of grief. And dealing with grief is hard, especially if it's by suicide. You have some people who's at peace and say, hey, I've accepted the fact, I know he's been struggling, he or she has been struggling for X amount of time. I know that, they're in a better place, all of these different things. And you have those, when it comes to suicide, is denial all the way, is 100% denial. How could they? Why?
Right.
You know? And then you have bargaining. If only they would have told me. If only
Right.
I would have knew. I would give my life for this. If only I could just talk to them this one last time. So you get the two. It's either denial or bargaining when it comes to the stages of grief, when it specifically comes to suicide.
I want to add to that because I'm just thinking about when I went through it.
Right.
And it was a little different, but you're right. The first thing is denial, right? And it was like we wanted to deny he didn't do this to himself. Someone did this. Something happened. Like there's no way, right? No, he didn't take his life. We need to rule out foul play. We need to see, you know what I mean? That was the first thing, right? But then once we realized, okay, this is what he did. For me, it was self-blame. I blame myself because I didn't know.
Yeah.
I blame myself because it was, what did I do? What did I not let him know that I love him? Did I not show him? So it was like the blame. And I think what I wanted to, as far as the coping, and I want to just stress to the family, at that point, it was really nothing you can do. You've done all that you're supposed to have done. But for whatever reason, he felt in his mind that he wasn't enough. And it wasn't you. It was that he felt like he wasn't enough, maybe. That's the hardest thing, because sometimes, I'll be honest, his birthday comes around, or, something happens with my kids and I'm like, he should have been here. It never goes away. It never goes away. And you have that moment where you're like, what if, right? You accept it, but you never get over it, and, again, my heart goes out to that family because it's tough. It's really tough. But that's definitely, like you said, Quintera, it was definitely the denial, and then the self-blaming. And then finally, the acceptance that, this was his path. This was what he chose, and it wasn't anything that we could have done differently, or that would have changed the outcome for him. I mean, I wish there was, but now we know better. So now there's things we could do to try to prevent and try to help and try to bring awareness to it, because back then it wasn't really, the big thing, because suicide, think about it, like, people weren't really committing suicide years and years ago. Like, this is, I don't know. It's just, it's rough. It's rough. And like I said, my heart goes out to the family. It's really touchy for me because, I had to deal with it, and it's not easy.
Right. So let's do this quickly so we can get out of here. We always try to provide resources, and definitely let's do that. We know there's a new number now you can dial. Is it 988? Is it 988? And it's unique with it because not only is it just for texting, it's also you can do the call or text. So however, if you dial the number, you're going to get somebody live. If you text the number, you get somebody live. So either way, it works. And then also there's the 800 number is still available as well. So there are plenty of resources. And then we're here for you. So as we speak, our email address is up now. You can email us. We'll be glad to reach out to you to help you, to get you any kind of information you need, because we want to put you in a position that suicide is not a thought, but getting you some help is the thought. So those are there any other resources?
I would encourage this family in particular who's just recently dealt with the loss is really be proactive in joining a support group. And you can do those virtually, but to make sure you have a circle of support of people who've experienced this and who can talk to you one on one, whether that's virtual. Facebook has a bunch of virtual groups where you can be a part of. But there are all kinds of online resources and different things like that. Even probably in Mississippi, nonprofit organizations that provide support groups and dealing with the loss of loved ones and stuff like that. But to really be active in getting involved like now, I know that there's probably arrangements and different things that has to take place as priority, but to just help you be able to get yourself out of bed, to make sure you are eating and you're showering and you're still engaging. Some people, they get busy, right? They say, hey, I gotta work, gotta keep myself busy so, I won't have to think about what's going on. But when you get ready to lay your head at night, you need to be able to process this with somebody, and don't feel like you're alone.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's do our final words, and we're gonna get out of here. So, Michelle, give us some final words.
I definitely agree with Q. Therapy and support groups are a must. They're age appropriate. It's not for adults. Seek help, seek support. Take your time to, like she says, self-care is very important. Eat, make sure that you're eating, make sure that you're hydrated, make sure that you are, if you can't seek support outside of the family, just make sure that you are processing with someone. And again, we are posting numbers, ways for you to contact someone. If you can't talk, text it. I know Q is an advocate of journaling. Get your thoughts out. Journal. Just some little nuggets. And if you're a believer, pray. And get in your word and trust God.
Amen. Ebony?
For sure.
I definitely think Michelle said it all. Basically, just, get in support groups. I just feel like, everything she said, just pray, write about it, and just, even not even just for the parents, but for the siblings, if there's a sibling, or even just in the community, because, suicide is such a crazy thing because, now that's been shown that this guy has committed suicide, there might have been another kid or someone who was contemplating, and now it's like, okay, now I can do it too, so just get the support groups for everybody, talk about it, don't sweep it under the rug, and ask how everyone is feeling, the self-care, in the check-ins, definitely, if you're a believer, pray. If if you're not a believer, we're still going to pray for you. So.
Yeah.
All right, Quintera.
My heart goes out, to this family. From, what I hear, this guy is young, he's at age 25. We talk about the brain fully being developed at 25. And so, it's hard to hear stuff like that, and I continue to, think about this family and give them prayer, give them support. And, it's so interesting because, I'm from the Delta, is almost unheard of someone in a small town where we come from committing suicide, and so I definitely feel like they're going to feel like they're on an island, and they're going to feel like they're on an island for a long time. Like nobody understands. Nobody will understand what I'm going through. And so I'm prayerful that the community can come together for this family. Um, and not only just the check-ins, but like, let me bring you dinner. Let me get you out the house. Let's go for a walk. Like, um, because they're gonna need that. They're gonna need that once everything is over. They're gonna need that and some more. Because, you know, you can prepare yourself for illness. You know, you can prepare yourself. You know, you can kind of conceptualize a car crash. You can't prepare yourself for a suicide. You know, and so it looks different. It feels different. It weighs more heavy. And so I'm like, they're seriously on my mind. And so I just pray that as they go through this, that they're really processing with someone who's going to be who can go above and beyond for them and their family, and that they do get involved with what self-care looks best for them. You know, like you said, I'm an advocate for journaling. I'm an advocate for exercising. I'm an advocate for so many different things, but they're gonna need somebody to hold their hand, not just talk about it, but they're gonna need someone to walk them through it. And
Absolutely.
so, um, I pray that they get what they need.
All right. So, as you know, I've had a heavy heart. I don't know what it is about this situation, but it's like it hits home, you know. Um, but I'm gonna close with this. That was one scripture that really came to my mind, that really helped me through this week. And I think I shared this with, I think I sent it to you. And it was Psalms 55, verse 22, where it says, "Cast thy burdens upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee." And when I actually just meditated on that, that word sustain, how it's used in the Hebrew, simply means that what God does in our lives, whether we know this or not, when we give him our burden, what God does is he measures uh, exactly how much strength we would need to handle the burden you just gave him. Man, I thought that was deep, because those of us who really study the word and trust God, God is saying, what's your burden? Okay, now you told me your burden. This is what I want you to do. Give it to me. And I'm going to put your burden on a scale to see how much strength you need.
Yeah.
So the Apostle Peter comes in the New Testament and says, "Cast thy cares upon me, for I care for you." So now God is saying, violently throw your burdens at me and watch what I do with them. So I never seen the fact that I've thrown something at God and he thrown it back at me.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? So when I throw him my sickness, he throws me healing. So that's the God we serve, y'all. So we can cast our burdens or cast our cares, because he's going to give us the exact strength we need to handle situations, even in this. So that's been my joy, even though that my heart is heavy. That's been my joy. So again, we send condolences to that family. I will be definitely trying to get in contact with that family. I have a friend that's his nephew, and we're going to be getting in contact with him to see what can we do. And then I want to say this, and I want to do this. At some point, I want all of us to get together in a setting where we can actually have a workshop. So that's my next project. And we're going to get a workshop together. If it's just that day where children can pour in and pour out, because let's be honest with ourselves, our children are crying, but sometimes we don't get to cry. All right.
That's heavy. That's heavy right there, you know, and the most vulnerable ages, people don't even recognize that you have the most influence on people is ages
Absolutely.
0 to 2, and young adults
Absolutely.
from 19 to 26.
Right. So that's where I'm at right now, because I know I can't save everybody's life, but we need to save somebody's life. All right. So this has been Mental Health Awareness again with Timothy Wright, along with Quintera, Michelle, and Ebony. We pray that you enjoy the rest of your night. Rest well. Good night.
Good night.